Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting latest Nigerian movie. Trust me, this movie will blow your mind and keep you glued to your seat. There's so much to learn from this incredible film, so stay tuned and listen carefully to this amazing story. The story begins with a young, beautiful, and successful woman named Patricia, who is a real estate agent. She is wealthy, but has an attitude problem that limits her chances of finding a partner. One morning, while on a call with her mom, Patricia was hurrying out to meet a client interested in a property. She noticed that her gateman had washed her car using detergent soap, which disgusted and irritated her. She slapped him, warning him never to use such a product on her car again, and then drove off. Later that day, Patricia's best friend, Elva, visited her. While waiting in the living room, Elva drank juice and watched a movie. Meanwhile, Patricia was on the phone with a client, trying to seal a deal for him to buy a property from her. After the call, Elva told Patricia about a friend overseas who had been interested in her for a long time. Patricia, showing no interest, responded that if the man wasn't interested in buying a property worth 1 billion naira, he should go his way. Elva tried to convince her to at least give the guy a chance, adding that Patricia needed a man in her life. However, Patricia, who had experienced her fair share of heartbreaks, didn't want to go down that road again. Though she was often paranoid and proud, Elva reminded her of her past and continued to persuade her to meet with Joe. Reluctantly, Patricia agreed. That night, while preparing for bed, Patricia received a phone call from Joe, the man Elva had introduced her to. They spoke pleasantly, and Joe suggested they go on a date since he was back in the country. Patricia gladly accepted. The next day, Patricia arrived at the restaurant where they were supposed to meet. She came early and waited for Joe, but after several minutes, he still hadn't shown up. Offended, Patricia called Elva to complain as she was losing patience. Elva pleaded with her to wait a little longer, and Patricia reluctantly agreed to wait for 5 more minutes before ending the call. A minute later, as Patricia was about to leave, Joe walked in. Seeing her about to go, he asked if she was leaving, and she lied, saying she had just arrived. They both sat down. The waitress served them 2 glasses of cocktails as Joe began to confess his feelings for Patricia. He proposed a toast to their date and hoped for many more to come. But what happened next shocked him. Patricia, who he thought was reserved, suddenly raised her voice at the waitress for serving her a cold drink in the chilly weather. The waitress politely explained that Patricia could have requested a different drink, but Patricia lost her temper and slapped her. Joe tried to calm her down, but Patricia stormed out, leaving him in shock. The following day, Elva heard about what happened on the date and confronted Patricia, expressing her disappointment. She urged Patricia to apologize to Joe for insulting and embarrassing him. However, Patricia refused, saying she couldn't lower herself for any man, and accusing Joe of being a coward for not defending her in public. Frustrated, Elva told Patricia that no amount of money could buy her a husband, and that her attitude would always betray her. Patricia to ponder her words, which lingered in Patricia's mind, leaving her disturbed. Later that day, Patricia called her mother, telling her she needed a husband since she wasn't getting any younger. She asked her mom to help find a husband from the village, and she would pay the groom price in full. Her mother was shocked and confused by this request and refused to do such a thing. Patricia, however, reminded her mother that it's the 21st century, and just as men go to the village to find wives they can control, an independent woman can do the same. Patricia's mother was left bewildered by her daughter's unusual request. A few days later, Patricia received a call from Joe asking her to come outside because he had something for her. Surprised that he knew her address, Patricia went out to check, and to her shock, she found Joe parked outside with a bouquet of flowers. Angrily, she asked how he found her address and accused him of stalking her. Joe, taken aback, calmly asked her to stop overreacting and behave more reasonably. This pushed Patricia over the edge, and she picked up a block and smashed his car's windscreen, leaving Joe shocked. However, Joe didn't let the incident slide. He had Patricia arrested for assault and property damage. The next day, Elva bailed Patricia out and scolded her for her inability to control her temper. Patricia, showing no remorse, insisted that Joe deserved what he got. She added that the money she spent bailing herself out wasn't an issue, and expressed satisfaction that Joe would never forget what happened. She walked away, leaving Elva speechless, wondering how someone could possess such a character. Days later, Patricia's mother called to give her an update about the husband she was trying to find for her in the village. She mentioned that she had spoken to several men, but none of them seemed interested in such an arrangement. except one person, Sunny, popularly known as Sparko. She continued, explaining that Sparko was a village troublemaker, a thug who had caused a lot of problems in the community. His behavior even gave his mother so much grief that it led to her death. Despite all the negative things her mother said about him, Patricia, being desperate, asked if he was interested, disregarding the warnings. This left her mother shocked and amused. Patricia assured her mother that she would come to the village that weekend to pay his groom price since he was the only option her mother could find, which made her mother even more concerned. That weekend, Patricia went to the village and returned with her new husband, Sparko, to her home. Sparko, awestruck by the beautiful house, was visibly impressed. Just as Patricia's mother had described him, Sparko indeed looked like a thug. He called Patricia by her name, and she sternly warned him never to do so again. She demanded that he call her Mama, or she would send him back to the village and reclaim the groom price. Feeling threatened, Sparko quickly adjusted and followed her instructions. As Patricia left him to settle in, Sparko continued admiring the house and greeted the gatekeeper before entering with his luggage. Once inside the living room, Sparko was struck by the beautiful interior design, something he had never seen before. He spent a moment marveling at it. Then Patricia called him and showed him to his room, which was the guest room. Surprised, Sparko asked why he couldn't stay in her room. Irritated, Patricia told him that he wasn't worthy of sharing a bed with her. She explained that she only married him to make a point, and when she needed him, she would call for him. She told him to respect her boundaries, leaving Sparko astonished. The next morning, Patricia ordered Sparko to fry her some eggs. Confused, Sparko wondered why he, her husband, was being asked to do household chores. Patricia made it clear that he was now a full-time house husband since she had paid his groom price in full. He had no choice but to do as she said, leaving Sparko speechless. Sparko then suggested a deal. If he was to do the chores and cook, she should pay him. Patricia, unimpressed, told him that money was never an issue for her and sent him off to do what she asked, leaving Sparko amused. That night, while Patricia was sleeping, Sparko entered her room. Seeing her lying on the bed, he became aroused and attempted to join her so they could perform their marital duties. Patricia immediately woke up and screamed at him to get out of her room, shocking Sparko. He explained that he was there for intimacy, but Patricia told him that would never happen. The only thing they would be making together was babies. And before that could happen, Sparko would need to undergo a thorough health check to ensure he hadn't contracted any diseases from his previous relationships. Feeling helpless, Sparko left the room. However, before leaving, he warned Patricia that when she eventually asked him to be intimate with her, he would spread her wide open and eat her raw, demonstrating his intentions. This disgusted and scared Patricia even more. The following morning, Sparko was cleaning, dancing, and singing while the doorbell rang. He didn't hear it until Patricia angrily dragged his attention to the door. She then attended to the visitor while Sparko continued his fun. Elva entered and was shocked to see a rough-looking man in her friend's house. They headed to Patricia's room to talk. In the room, Elva expressed her disappointment in Patricia for stooping so low as to marry such a man. Unbothered, Patricia explained that Sparko was the only person her mother could find, and now that the deed was done, she couldn't change it. She further clarified that Sparko was more like a houseboy or a sperm donor, and once she was done having children, she would get rid of him. Elva, dumbfounded, couldn't comprehend her friend's words. Days later, Patricia returned from work and found Sparko sleeping on the couch. She began smiling and admiring him as he slept until she smelled something burning from the kitchen. Alarmed, she rushed to check. Coughing from the smoke, Patricia came out of the kitchen enraged, grabbed her heels, and hit Sparko on the forehead. She yelled at him for being stupid and insensitive, accusing him of almost burning down the house. Sparko, in pain, held his head, but Patricia showed no sympathy and went upstairs. Later, in his room, Sparko had bandaged his forehead and was furious. Determined to get back at her, he came up with a plan. The next day, after Patricia left for work, Sparko went into her room searching for money or valuable items. He searched everywhere but didn't find any cash, so he took her iPad and her expensive jewelry box and left the house, feeling bold and fearless. Sparko met with a buyer and sold the items. The buyer inspected the goods carefully and, impressed, gave Sparko some money. Sparko then returned home. Later that day, Patricia began searching for her iPad and soon realized that her jewelry box was also missing. Shocked, she quickly deduced that it must have been Sparko's doing and called out his name. When she confronted him, Sparko denied knowing anything about the missing items, claiming he didn't take anything and suggesting she should look for them elsewhere. Patricia, losing her temper, asked him one last time where he had taken her things. When he continued to deny it, she had no choice but to call the police on him. So, hearing Patricia call the police, got scared but quickly acted fearless, boasting that he would beat up any policeman who came his way. He even demonstrated how he would handle them, while Patricia remained silent. A few hours later, 2 policemen arrived and took Sparko away. The same man who had been bragging that he wasn't afraid of the police was now begging not to be arrested. However, Patricia was furious and determined, instructing the police to take him away from her house. That night, while Patricia was sleeping, she received a call from her mother. Her mother questioned why she had arrested her own husband. She reminded Patricia that she had warned her about the kind of person Sparko was before the marriage. Patricia felt helpless and explained that the iPad Sparko stole contained vital documents, and she was concerned about retrieving the information. Her mother sternly told her to release Sparko immediately before ending the call, leaving Patricia devastated. The following morning, Patricia went to the police station to release Sparko and brought him home. As soon as they arrived, Sparko went to his room to pack his luggage and leave. However, Patricia stopped him, reminding him that she had paid his groom price in full, so he had no right to leave. To her surprise, Sparko firmly told her that he wasn't interested in the marriage anymore and that she could go ahead and collect her groom price back. He prepared to leave, but Patricia, overwhelmed with anger, tried to stop him again. This time, Sparko became provoked. For the first time, he raised his voice, showing his dominant side. He warned her that just because he had been quiet didn't mean he had lost his bad side. He even threatened her, saying that if this had happened in the village and she called the police on him, his boys wouldn't have treated her kindly. Patricia became terrified and tried to explain that he had stolen from her. As Sparko raised his hand to hit her, Patricia suddenly collapsed from a heart attack. Sparko initially thought she was faking it and ignored her, but when he saw she was unresponsive, he became concerned and rushed to her aid. Shocked that she wasn't breathing, he panicked, thinking he had killed someone. A week later, Patricia, who had been in the hospital, was brought back home. She hadn't died after all. She had only suffered a heart attack but was recovering. While she was resting, Elva visited Sparko and thanked him for taking care of her friend during the time she was hospitalized. Sparko, amazed, told her he was just doing his duty as a husband, which made Elva happy. She then asked if he still planned to return to the village after what had happened when he tried to leave. Sparko thought for a moment and decided he wouldn't leave anymore. He couldn't abandon Patricia in her current condition. Elva was relieved and thanked him, asking him to make sure Patricia took her medication as prescribed by the doctor. Sparko assured her he would, and Elva left. Later that day, Sparko was cooking in the kitchen, having fun as he experimented with new cooking skills. When the food was ready, he served Patricia in her room, but when she tasted it, she immediately spat it out, asking if he had cooked salt instead of rice. Sparko tasted the food and quickly apologized, explaining that he was trying out new recipes and had accidentally added too much salt. He apologized again and hurried off to cook fresh rice, as the stew and plantain were still good, leaving Patricia amused. The next day, after giving Patricia her medication, she asked to take a shower but didn't have the strength. Sparko advised her to rest, assuring her that she wasn't smelling, but Patricia insisted that she needed a bath as she felt uncomfortable. Sparko had to help her to the bathroom. When they got there, he left her to bathe, but Patricia called him back, asking him to help her in the bathroom as she didn't have the strength. Shocked, Sparko asked again to make sure he heard correctly, and Patricia confirmed. He was amused, but still surprised by her request. The next day, Sparko went to Patricia's room and, feeling remorseful, returned her iPad and jewelry box. He assured her that everything was still intact, leaving Patricia shocked and perplexed. Sparko explained that he wasn't a thief. Yes, he was stubborn, but stealing wasn't in his nature. He only took the items to get back at her. Patricia was wowed and happy to have her iPad back. She then asked Sparko for his phone number so she wouldn't have to shout his name when she needed him. Sparko typed his number into her phone and was about to leave when Patricia called him back. Thinking she wanted to call him for intimacy, Sparko smiled and turned around, but to his disappointment, she only wanted to thank him for returning her iPad. Disappointed, he replied and left her room, leaving Patricia confused. Later that day, Patricia was on the phone with a client who was interested in buying a workspace from her. However, there was a problem. The client wanted to visit the space, but Patricia didn't have the strength to go out, leaving her worried. Sparko entered the room and reminded her that the doctor had said she needed to rest. Patricia, already concerned about losing money, told him about the client. Sparko offered to help, but Patricia was skeptical. Knowing Sparko's rugged appearance and poor command of English, she doubted his ability to meet with her client. Sparko reassured her that nothing was impossible. He suggested dressing in official attire and changing his look, insisting that he could manage the situation and convince the client to buy the property. Patricia was amused and reluctantly agreed to get him some formal clothes to see if he could pull it off, though she reminded him that convincing someone to buy property wasn't an easy task. Sparko remained confident and pleaded with her to rest while he took care of the matter. The following day, Patricia was in her room when, to her surprise, Sparko walked in wearing a suit, looking presentable and handsome. She was amazed and immediately began praising his appearance, which made him smile. He started rehearsing everything he had learned about negotiating with the client as her husband. Though he made several mistakes, Patricia corrected him on the spot until he became almost perfect. Throughout the practice, Patricia smiled and admired him as she watched him improve. He even tried to refine his speech, changing his name from Sparko to Sunday when talking to the client to appear more professional. After all the practice, Patricia wished him well and believed in his ability to close the deal before he left. Before going, Sparko reminded her to take her medication, and she assured him she would. He left, happy and excited, walking out with a perfect gentleman's step, which made Patricia smile. Later that day, Sparko returned home looking sad. Patricia, worried, asked what was wrong. Sparko, noticing her concern, decided to reveal the truth. He had successfully sealed the deal. Patricia was overjoyed and jumped up to hug him, though she later adjusted herself. She saw that the payment was more than expected, making her even more excited. She offered to give Sparko the profit from the deal for pulling off such a successful business transaction. Sparko was ecstatic as the profit amounted to millions of naira. Overjoyed, he lifted her in a hug, apologizing when she asked to be put down. Still, both were happy, and Patricia even offered Sparko the opportunity to work with her. The next day, Elva brought the clothes Patricia had asked her to get for Sparko. Patricia then expressed her admiration for Sparko to Elva, admitting she had never seen him look so handsome. She mentioned how lost she felt seeing him in official attire and quickly left to give Sparko the clothes. In Sparko's room, he was amazed by the gift and thanked Patricia, calling her Mama. Patricia, already blushing, told him that since they were married, he could now call her his wife. Sparko was shocked but excited. He then asked when they would make love since they had accepted their relationship. Patricia just smiled, told him to try on the outfit, and left, leaving Sparko happy and excited. A few days later, Sparko was in the living room on a call with a client, as he had already started working with his wife. Patricia entered and asked him how he could sound so educated when he wanted to. Sparko then opened up, explaining that he wasn't illiterate and actually had an O-level certificate. He told her he had been one of the best graduating students in his class. Surprised, Patricia asked what had happened and why he didn't further his education. Sparko became emotional as he told his story. Just as he was about to gain admission to the university, his father died after battling a serious illness with no cure. Life became difficult, and instead of becoming useless, Sparko decided to find something to do with his hands. Unfortunately, he met some boys he thought would help him find work, but they turned out to be street guys. They influenced him to join them, and before he knew it, he was lost in the crowd, becoming a nuisance in the village. He acted out as a form of defense so that others wouldn't take advantage of him. Tragically, when his mother died, the villagers blamed him for her death. He accepted the blame in his heart, believing he had caused her death. Seeing how emotional Sparko had become, Patricia consoled him and encouraged him to move on and be better, leaving the past behind. She asked if he would like to further his education, but Sparko refused, saying he had lost interest. However, he expressed a desire to learn more about the real estate business. Patricia was amused and assured him that it was fine and that she would help him learn the business. Feeling grateful, Sparko expressed his appreciation for everything Patricia had done for him, making her smile as they hugged. Sparko came out of the bathroom shirtless, heading to dress up when Patricia entered the room. Upon seeing his bare chest, she froze for a moment, looking lost in thought, but quickly snapped out of it. She informed him that dinner was ready and that she had just come to let him know. Noticing how her eyes couldn't seem to leave his chest, Sparko moved closer, took her hand and placed it on his chest, asking her to feel it. At that moment, Patricia was lost in her thoughts, but she quickly stopped herself, told him to come have dinner, and left. Patricia was amused to realize that the man she had been living with was this attractive and sexy, making her blush uncontrollably. He was exactly her type of man, and now she was proud to call him her husband, smiling non-stop. That evening, they had dinner together. As they ate, Patricia taught Sparko how to use cutlery properly. He was glad to learn and quickly improved, and they enjoyed their meal happily. Patricia was already developing feelings for Sparko, and this time, she could no longer hold them back. One beautiful morning, while Sparko was cleaning the living room, Patricia approached him and confessed that she was starting to like the idea of him being her husband for real. However, she admitted that she didn't go about things the right way. She told him that if he felt the same way she did, they should do the right thing. She didn't want him to be with her just for her money. Sparko immediately confessed that, at first, it had been about the money, but now his feelings for her were genuine, and he wanted to stay. Patricia then told him to think about it and come back to her with his decision, leaving Sparko deep in thought. That night, Sparko was in his room, reflecting on Patricia's suggestion to do the right thing. He realized she meant that if he was interested in her, he should return the groom price and then pay her bride price properly, as tradition dictates. He kept thinking about how to tell her that he was ready to commit. Just then, Patricia entered the room. Shocked, Sparko quickly turned to speak, but she seductively put her finger on his lips to quiet him. She signaled him to come over to her room, smiled, and left, leaving Sparko in total surprise and excitement. He realized she wanted him just as much as he wanted her, so he hurriedly went to her room. The next morning, after a long night together, Sparko woke up to find Patricia missing. He called her name but got no response. He started to worry that he might have upset her with the way he handled things in bed. But soon, he smiled, recalling the wonderful time they had shared. Meanwhile, Patricia was in the kitchen, making breakfast while on the phone with her friend Elva. She was gushing about her experience with Sparko in bed, saying it was the best feeling she had had in ages. She expressed her gratitude to Elva for being such a good friend, always patient, caring, and loving despite Patricia's unruly behavior toward both her and men in general. Just then, Sparko quietly entered the kitchen and startled her. Surprised, she asked how long he had been standing there. "Long enough to hear your entire conversation," he replied, making Patricia feel shy and uncomfortable. Sparko then teased her about their intimate experience, leaving Patricia smiling shyly. She had planned to surprise him with breakfast in bed, but since he was already awake, the surprise was ruined. He playfully told her he would go back to bed so she could serve him there, making her laugh. Sparko then took her hand and began professing his love for her. He had fallen deeply in love and was ready to return the groom price and properly visit her family to pay her bride price. He wanted them to have the most beautiful wedding ever. Excited and happy, Patricia told him he would receive commissions from any property he sold, allowing him to make more money for their wedding. Sparko was overwhelmed with disbelief and emotion, thanking her as they shared an emotional hug. In the end, Patricia, who had initially tried to prove a point to her friend that she could marry a man with her own money, realized that no matter how much money a woman has, it can't give her a husband who will truly love and respect her. Only good character can attract the right husband. Ultimately, she helped her man make more money so he could properly pay her bride price and do things the right way. So, what do you all learn from this beautiful story? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to this channel for more interesting and latest Nigerian movie updates. See you next time.